Hegel is hard, genuinely, brutally hard. There's a famous line from a Hegel scholar comparing reading him to chewing an iron biscuit. It's not exactly pleasant. There's an old joke that Hegel himself didn't fully understand everything he wrote. He invented his own private vocabulary, used ordinary words to mean things they don't normally mean, and buried some of the most important ideas in the history of thought under sentences that make your eyes slide off the page. So here's my promise to you. I am not going to pretend this is easy, and I am not going to hide behind the jargon the way a lot of explainers do. Because here's the thing I actually believe, and it matters. If you don't understand something, that doesn't mean it's meaningless. Sometimes it means the idea is genuinely difficult, and sometimes, this is the honest part, it means whoever tried to explain it to you did a bad job. So if this video doesn't make Hegel click for you, that's on me, not on you. And I'm going to do something a little strange to make it click, because Hegel's central idea is a specific kind of motion, a way things grow by absorbing their own opposites. I'm going to let that motion shape the video itself. This whole thing is going to move the way Hegel thinks. You'll see what I mean. But let me tell you why it's worth the effort up front, so you have a reason to stay. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you that the single most Hegelian object in existence is sitting in your pocket right now. That the way you build an identity on Instagram, the way you become someone online, runs on a mechanism Hegel described 200 years ago. Nobody talks about Hegel in social media. They should, because he might be the only philosopher who actually explains what's happening to you every time you post. Let's begin, and I promise, we'll get there together. To understand what Hegel is fighting for, you have to understand the problem he inherited. So let me set up the wall he spent his life trying to tear down. The philosopher before him, Immanuel Kant, had said something that shook everything. Kant argued that you never experience reality as it truly is. Everything you perceive, this screen, this room, the whole world, is filtered and assembled by your own mind. Space, time, cause and effect, those aren't features of the world out there. They're the lenses built into your head. So there's the world as it appears to you, and the world as it actually is in itself. And that real world, Kant said you can never reach it. It's sealed off forever behind your own perception. Now, Hegel actually admired part of this. He thought Kant was right to start by asking, how do we know what we know, before charging ahead? But he saw a catastrophe hiding inside it. Because look what Kant's move does. It splits reality clean in two. The world in here, in my mind, and the world out there, which I can never touch. It builds a wall down the middle of existence. On one side, you, the thinking subject. On the other side, everything else. Nature, objects, other people, permanently on the far side of a barrier you can never cross. And a thinker Hegel respected had already sounded the alarm. A philosophy like this, taken seriously, leads straight to nihilism. Because if you're locked inside your own mind, cut off from reality itself, then any real connection to the world, to nature, to each other, becomes impossible. You're alone in here, forever, guessing at a world you'll never actually reach. That's the wall. Subject on one side, object on the other. Hold that image, because everything Hegel does is an attempt to smash it. And the first move is to go back to a much older way of seeing. Here's Hegel's counter-move, and it's radical. He says, the wall was never real. The split between you and the world, between subject and object, between mind and nature, it's a mistake philosophy talked itself into. And to fix it, he reaches back past Kant, past Descartes, all the way to the ancient Greeks before Socrates, who saw reality as a single living whole, not a Noah staring at a world across a gap. Hegel's big claim is that there is only one reality, one substance, one whole containing absolutely everything. You, me, nature, thought, all of it. Nothing stands outside it. Now, if you know this series, this should sound familiar. It's very close to Spinoza, the one substance that is everything. And Hegel adored Spinoza. He said if you want to be a philosopher, you first have to become a Spinozist. So let me be clear about what this is not, because people constantly get it wrong. When you hear one absolute reality, you might picture something floating, otherworldly, mystical, some supernatural realm above the physical world. Hegel means the exact opposite. There is nothing above nature, nothing beyond space and time, no separate heaven of eternal forms. The whole thing is right here, immanent in the physical, living world. He's not a mystic. If anything, he sounds almost like a materialist, which is exactly why Karl Marx was able to build his entire materialist philosophy out of Hegel's bones. So we've knocked down the wall. Reality is one seamless whole, and you're not a prisoner staring at it from behind glass. You're part of it, made of the same stuff, in living contact with it. But now there's a new problem, and it's a big one. Because the ancient Greek who first imagined reality as one fixed, unchanging whole, Parmenides, reached a strange conclusion. If everything is one static block, then nothing ever really changes. Motion is an illusion, and that's obviously false. The world is nothing but change. So how do you get a living, changing, evolving world out of a single, unified reality? How does the one whole move? And answering that is where Hegel stops sounding like anyone before him and becomes himself. Here's the leap, and notice what's happening in the video right now. We had a thesis, Kant's wall. We had an antithesis, Hegel smashing it. And now we're arriving at a synthesis that keeps what was true in both and rises above them. That's not a coincidence. That is Hegel's method, and I've been walking you through it on purpose. This motion has a name, and it's the key to everything, the dialectic. So let's actually understand it, because it's the most misunderstood idea he has. People think the dialectic is some abstract logic trick, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, chanted like a spell. It's much more alive than that, and its true origin isn't some dusty logician. It's Heraclitus, the ancient Greek who said everything is fire and flux and the tension of opposites. Hegel takes that and builds a whole universe on it. Here's the core idea. That single reality isn't a dead, frozen block. It's alive, and it develops. It grows, unfolds, becomes more than it was. But here's the crucial part people miss. It does this not by being pushed from outside, but from its own internal tension. Everything contains its own opposite, its own contradiction, and it's precisely that inner contradiction that drives it forward into something new. Now here's the word that finally made Hegel click for me. In German, unbearable. It's beautiful, because the word means three things at once: to cancel, to preserve, and to lift up. And that's exactly what dialectical motion does. When something moves to a higher stage, it doesn't destroy the old stage. It doesn't just erase it and replace it. It absorbs it, cancels what was limited about it, keeps what was true in it, and lifts the whole thing to a higher level. Preservation through transcendence. You overcome something by including it. And let me make this concrete, because this is where it stops being abstract and starts being about you. Forget philosophy for a second. Think about your own self. Think about you at 5 years old, then you at 15, then you now. Is the person you are today a different person than that 5-year-old, a separate being who replaced them? No, you contain that 5-year-old. Their experiences, their memories, the person they were, all of it is folded inside who you are now. And yet, you are also clearly more than that child. You've grown past them, transcended them. You cancelled what was limited about being 5, preserved what mattered, and lifted it into who you are now. There is one you, a single, continuous self, constantly becoming, absorbing everything you were and rising beyond it. That is unbearable. That's the dialectic, and you've been living it your entire life. It always makes me think of a line from the poet Rilke, that we live our lives in widening rings, each one growing out around the last. Not leaping from one separate circle to another, but expanding, each ring containing all the smaller rings inside it and reaching beyond them. That's not a metaphor about Hegel, that basically is Hegel. So now we have a living reality that grows by absorbing its own contradictions, rising through stage after stage. But grows toward what? Is it just random change, or is it going somewhere? And that question opens the deepest and most controversial part of his whole system. Hegel says the process isn't random, it's going somewhere. And to see where, he borrows one more idea from the ancient world. From Aristotle this time. Here's the difference. In Spinoza's universe, and in Darwin's for that matter, one thing causes the next, which causes the next, in an endless mechanical chain, with no destination, no goal. It just unfolds, cause after cause, going nowhere in particular. Aristotle thought differently. Think about building a house. You don't just dump workers on a lot and let them stack bricks at random. You'd get a disaster. First, there's a plan, a design of the finished house. And that end goal is what organizes the entire process from the start. The destination pulls the whole thing forward and gives it meaning. Hegel fuses these. The one living reality is developing toward something, realizing a goal that was in it all along as potential. But, and this is the part that makes it his, there's no architect standing outside it, no external god imposing the plan. The design is internal. The whole contains within itself the drive to become what it's meant to be, and the power to get there on its own. It's a goal-directed process with no one directing it from outside. And what is the goal? What is all of reality straining across all of history to become? Hegel's answer is one of the most audacious ideas anyone has ever had. He calls the developing whole Geist, usually translated as spirit or mind. And again, kill the mystical picture in your head. This isn't a ghost. Geist realizes itself in the material world through history. And here's his stunning claim. The essence of matter is gravity. The essence of spirit is freedom. The entire process of reality, all of history, is Geist gradually coming to know itself. And that self-knowing takes the form of the growth of freedom. That's what history is for Hegel. Not just one thing happening after another. History is the story of freedom slowly becoming conscious of itself. He looks at the human past and sees a dialectical climb, from societies where almost no one was free, through stages of struggle and contradiction and Aufhebung, towards societies that grasp freedom, equality, justice. History has a direction, and the direction is freedom waking up. Now, this is a grand, sweeping, and genuinely contestable claim, and I want to flag that honestly. Plenty of thinkers after Hegel argued that history has no such neat direction, that this is too optimistic, too tidy, fair. But before we judge it, there's one more piece. The piece that turns this cosmic story into something intensely personal, and finally unlocks your phone. Because Hegel says this whole process, this self-knowing, has one requirement that changes everything. You cannot become yourself alone. Here's the piece that makes Hegel matter to your actual life. It's one of his most famous ideas, and it's the hinge of everything. Self-consciousness requires another consciousness. What does that mean? Hegel argues that you cannot become a full self in isolation. You cannot know who you are just by looking inward. To become genuinely self-aware, you need another self, someone outside you, to recognize you. Your identity isn't something you generate privately in your own head and then show to the world. It's forged in the space between you and others. You become who you are through being seen. Recognition isn't a nice bonus on top of selfhood, it's the mechanism that creates selfhood. Sit with that for a second because it's strange and it's deep. The self isn't a solid thing inside you, it's a relationship. It's dialectical, it needs its opposite, the other person, in order to exist at all. You need to be recognized to become real to yourself. Now, open Instagram. Because what is a social media profile? It is the human need for recognition, extracted from you, industrialized, and turned into a machine. Hegel said you become yourself by being recognized by others. Instagram takes that ancient, fundamental human process and gives it a number, the like count, the follower count. It converts recognition, the very thing Hegel said forges your identity, into a running, public, quantified score. And watch how perfectly and how disturbingly it maps onto him. Hegel said yourself is not built alone, in private. It's built in the space between you and others through their recognition. That used to happen slowly, with a handful of real people, over years. The feed compresses it into something instant, constant, and enormous. You are now being recognized, or ignored, by thousands of strangers, in real time, all day long. The dialectic of recognition that Hegel described, unfolding between a person and the people who actually know them, is now running at industrial scale, with metrics attached, and it never turns off.
And here's where it gets genuinely unsettling, and where I think Hegel would have something sharp to say. Think about the self that gets built this way. Hegel's whole vision was of a self that grows through Aufhebung, absorbing its past, integrating its contradictions, becoming a deeper, more whole, continuous person over time. That's a self that develops. But the self Instagram builds isn't developing toward wholeness. It's optimizing for recognition, reshaping itself, moment to maximize the score. You post the version of yourself that gets seen, and then you become a little more like that version, and then you post again. It's a dialectic, yes, self and other, shaping each other. But it's a dialectic that's been hijacked. Instead of spiraling upward into a richer, freer self, it can spiral sideways, or downward, into a self that exists mainly to be approved of. Recognition without growth.
The mechanism of selfhood, running with the wrong goal. But, and I have to be fair to this because a cheap social media bad take would betray everything Hegel stands for, there's the other side, and it's the genuinely Hegelian insight the doom takes miss. Hegel's whole point is that isolation is death for the self, that you need others to become real. And for some people, the isolated kid, the person who fits nowhere in their physical town, the one who never found anyone who recognized them, the feed is the first place they ever get seen at all. The first place they find others who reflect them back, who help them become more themselves, not less. That's not a corruption of Hegel's dialectic. That's the dialectic working exactly as he said it should. Recognition creating a self that couldn't have formed alone. So the same machine that flattens one person into an approval-seeking performance can be the thing that finally lets another person exist. Both are true. And which one it is depends on whether the recognition is helping you grow, spiral upward, absorb, become more whole, or just helping you get approved of. That, right there, is the most Hegelian question you can ask about your own phone. So was it worth chewing the iron biscuit? Look at what we actually did. We started with a wall, the modern feeling of being trapped inside your own head, cut off from the world and everyone in it. And we watched Hegel take that wall apart, piece by piece, and replace it with something else. A vision of one living reality that grows by absorbing its own contradictions. A self that becomes real only through others. A history slowly waking up into freedom. You don't have to swallow all of it. The grand march of history is a genuinely debatable claim, and honest people have pushed back on it hard. But the core of it, that you are not a sealed-off mind, that you become who you are through the people who recognize you, that growth means absorbing your past rather than erasing it, that, I think, is just true. And it's more urgent now than it's ever been, because you're carrying a device in your pocket that runs on exactly this mechanism, for better and for worse, every hour of every day. And notice one last thing. This whole video moved dialectically. A thesis, Kant's wall. Its antithesis, Hegel tearing it down. A synthesis that rose above both. Then that synthesis became a new starting point, and we climbed again and again, each stage absorbing the last, until we arrived somewhere we couldn't have reached from the beginning, your own reflection in a glowing screen. That wasn't a gimmick. That was me trying to let you feel the one idea that matters most in Hegel, instead of just telling you about it. Because that climb, cancelling, preserving, rising, becoming more than you were, is not just how Hegel thinks. According to him, it's how you're alive.